Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thanks for stopping by to watch. Today we want to talk a little bit more about just the preparedness levels that you need to be at for what could be happening, what looks to be happening around the world, and it's starting to grow in possible outbreaks in other countries. And it's this virus that I'm sure many of you are keeping up on. And I've talked a little bit about preparedness, actual physical preparedness for it. And I wanted to expand on it a little bit more because there's quite a few experts out there, and just the data that we're seeing, it looks like that this could be here for a while, and it could definitely start causing some disruptions of our lives. Not just the fact that you could become, ill from a virus, but just the disruption of our lives in general. And so this is certainly a scenario that those of you in the preparedness community prepare for. So we have to stay ready for it. Whatever it throws at us, we need to do our best to stay ready. There are more reports coming out of China and other countries in the Asian, area, that certain factories, certain companies are either shutting down more, they're planning on being shut down for longer than expected. The shipping routes are being kind of boggled up because they're not able to unload shipments, they're not able to load shipments. There's warehouses that are starting to either back up on one end or go dry on the other end because of the lack of shipments. And so what we're seeing here is the beginning of kind of a snowball effect of supply lines. And we don't really know yet how bad this is going to get. One thing that I've mentioned that many of you, I'm sure, are well aware of is the amount of our goods here in the United States that comes from China, or at least components or ingredients or, some type of, part of, something that we would get comes from China. So it's very important to remember that, most everything that is, purchased here in the United States has some kind of connection to China and Chinese goods. So even our food supply, look at chicken. Most of the chicken nowadays is maybe it's grown here, but it's shipped to China where they process it and then they ship it back. I haven't found any information yet on how that is currently affected or could be affected. I did see some information that there are shipping containers full of food over in China that are just sitting there, and they have no employees to load them onto ships. So I don't know if they didn't specifically say if it was some of the chicken from the United States, but it certainly could be. And I think that in the next few months, and this isn't just my opinion, it's other financial experts that are saying, and I'm not one, that are saying that, we've probably got another month or two before we start really feeling the financial aspect and the just the breakdown of the supply chain aspect of this virus that's breaking out in China. And so the point is that even if it stops today, if it stops today and doesn't get any worse, which there's absolutely no evidence to support that, but let's just assume that it happened that way, we would still feel the effects of it. And the longer this goes on and the bigger it gets, the worse those effects could be. So regardless of whether it ends today or this goes on for months or even another year, I think it's pretty safe to say that we are going to start feeling the effects of this here in our nation when it comes to, our supply chain of goods. So that's something that we need to be prepared for. And I know many of you prepare for this all the time, but there are things that, that you can still, get to and still purchase and still, get ready for that you need to be doing. Of course, like always, food and water, food and water, food and water. Food is cheap still. Now I haven't seen any reports yet, but the majority of our rice comes from China. So we'll see how that is starting to be affected. I haven't seen any information yet or any reports showing that it has currently been affected, but it could be. It certainly could be affected since a lot of it does come from China. So that's something that is a common prepper food that we bulk up on a lot, and it could be affected. There are other dry goods that you can be purchasing, canned goods, freeze-dried goods, your number 10 cans, your foil pack type of meals that are kind of meals ready to eat, or something maybe not ready to eat, but you have to add water to them, the freeze-dried foods. Those are certainly things that you want to be storing up and increasing the amount of food. And it's not necessarily because it just may all go away. It could be that the prices get really expensive. You may start seeing grocery prices really skyrocket or become difficult to get all that you want, because whether it's a breakdown of supply chain, or it could be where the masses start realizing the danger of this, and they start hoarding food, and they start running to the store and buying as much as they can. And so between those two things, you could start seeing much more limited supplies in the store. So while it's still there, you should be buying extra to keep on hand for those times. Water supplies are definitely always something to think about. So always have water on hand and a way to purify water. Now, the other things that you need to be really thinking about is medical supplies. I talk about that a lot, but like I've said before recently, medical supplies in this particular situation are critical, not just because the thing you're prepping for is a virus, but because the majority of our medical supplies come from China. Whether it's over-the-counter medicines, prescription medications, and just medical supplies in general, Band-Aids, masks, gauze, all that kind of stuff. Most of it comes from China. And so with the, more and more of a breakdown of supply from over there, those items could become more limited. People are already having a hard time finding N95 masks because they pretty much are all made in China. Everyone's buying them up, and we're not getting any more resupplies, or very limited resupplies coming in because of what's happening over there. So those are some things that you should be stocking up on. Now, aside from that, also, Tyvek suits, that type of stuff, some goggles or face shield is definitely something you want to have on hand, because the reports are is that this isn't just aerosol or airborne, but it's also getting in through the eyes. And there's other reports that it's going through fecal, it's going through water. At this point we don't know. So taking the most precaution you can is certainly, I think, worth it. Now, other things that you can be doing is setting up like a decontamination area in your home. If you have say an attached garage or a laundry room that has its own exit or entrance, if you have like a side room, maybe like like a mud room where you would come in, take your shoes off. If there's something that you can kind of come in from the outside but keep that room separated, it would not be a bad idea to set up a decontamination area, or at least have the equipment ready to set one up. And it's not difficult to do. Some of the heavy plastic sheeting that you can get at, say, Walmart, back in the paint section or hardware section, you can get big rolls of that for real cheap. That and some duct tape works really well to set up a decontamination area. And generally what you're going to do is have some buckets of soapy water and some scrub brushes and sponges or whatever, and you would go in, decloak all the way down, scrub yourself really good with soapy water, and then have towels and a change of clothes there so that you can change into before you go inside. And even though that may not keep you from getting it, but if you potentially have any contaminants on your body or clothes, you're not bringing it into your home. So that is something that you might consider. There are protocols that you can look up online, ones that the CDC uses, ones that other government agencies like FEMA, they have decontamination protocols. So you can look those up and kind of get an idea of what you need to do if you so choose to set up a decontamination area in your home to keep from potentially bringing it inside your home. Now, if you're going to go to that extent, you may also consider quarantining your home if it starts to get bad in your area. So that would be also putting plastic sheeting on windows and doors and vents, things that would be bringing in air from the outside. Is it necessary? I don't know. This is not a chemical agent that's going to spread as far into the air as a chemical agent would. So far, from what I've been reading, it looks like that it's about a 6 to 8 foot range of when you're around someone. But you know what? There's a lot of information that we don't know, a lot of things we don't know about this. So if you want to go to that level, you certainly could, and it's not as expensive or difficult as you think it is to kind of seal your home off. You're not going to make a perfect seal, but you could definitely reduce the amount coming in. So those are some options there. The other thing is just reducing your contact with people. That seems to be the way that people are getting it most. The more that they're in close contact and closed off, with people, like in a bus or in a boat or, in a car, in a building, in a hospital, that's where you're seeing a lot of these numbers start, jumping up. So do the best that you can to prevent that, then you're going to reduce the chances of it, kind of getting to you. Good hygiene, protocols, washing your hands, keeping some kind of mask on when you're around people. It's not going to be 100%, certainly not, but it's going to, reduce your odds, I believe, of getting that. So, I think you're going to be better off having that kind of stuff on than just walking around without it. Staying away from people is going to be important, I was reading somewhere that even today, as of the making of this video, the amount of people that are still booking cruises, around the world, going on cruises and stuff, it's still happening. People are still doing it. And in my mind, I would think that no one in the world would want to be on a cruise ship right now. And yet people are still doing it. I'm not telling you not to, but I'm telling you that you probably should think long and hard, at least, before making that decision, because getting on a plane, getting on a cruise ship, getting on a public transportation, you're drastically increasing your odds of coming in contact with something like this. So that's just common sense stuff. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of common sense out there anymore. Some of the other things that you can do just to kind of get yourself prepared, get your family prepared is talking about it. Talking about it with them, about, not sharing things with their friends, and, not sharing food. If you're sick, teaching your kids how to, cover their nose, that kind of stuff. Again, common sense stuff that, a lot of people just don't seem to have common sense. And then, the other thing that you probably should be thinking about is, especially if this thing starts getting really bad, is you need to start getting to the point where you're not as dependent upon the food supply system. And by that, you need to probably start growing your own food, which is something that I talk about all the time on this channel, that you should be growing your own food. If you really want to be prepared, if you really want to be self-sufficient, then growing your own food is right where it's at. I made a video over on my Patreon channel today, giving some tips to gardening. If you want to sign up and look at that video, you're welcome to. But certainly getting to the place to where you're supplementing your food supply by the food that you're growing on your own is greatly going to increase your preparedness level and your self-sufficiency level. So learning to do things on your own, well, that's the key to being self-sufficient, right? And not being as dependent upon the system, because even though the system may not be completely destroyed through all this, I don't believe it would be, the system could definitely slow down or have little breaks of service here and there because of what's happening with this virus. So that's where we need to be prepared. I don't think we're looking at the end of time apocalypse happening before our eyes, but I definitely think that we could be experiencing in the near future times where certain services and certain goods are not as readily available, or at least available at the price that we're used to paying. So that is the big thing that we need to start focusing on, along with obviously the chance of contracting the virus. And that seems to just be the obvious. All right, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.